Hello, my friends. I I've been reading up on what happens to Jamal Khashoggi. Jamal Khashoggi was journalist, editor. He wrote for the Washington Post. He also had his own newspaper. I believe he was Saudi born, and I was doing research on who he is or was, and he is the nephew of Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi was an arms dealer. He was a Saudi of Turkish origin who basically he was the most successful arms dealer of U.S. manufactured weapons in the Middle East. He sold weapons for Lockheed, Grumman, and Northrop, all these people, all this, I call them merchants of death. The United States military-industrial complex. And he became very rich doing this, selling weapons for the Americans. He used his contacts in his family. His father, the father of Adnan Khashoggi, was the physician, the doctor, the personal doctor for the king of Saudi Arabia. All these people are connected to the United States through all their dealings with oil and weapons. So that's giving you. He's also Jamal Khashoggi was also cousins, I believe, with Dodi Fayed. Dodi Fayed was the boyfriend of Lady D, Princess Diana. She had when she died, in the accident, the car crash she had, she was with Dodi Fayed in the car, and when she died in that accident. Now, Dodi Fayed's father claimed that he was assassinated by the British service because the royal family in Great Britain did not want to have an Arab married to the mother of the princess. Now, so those are the allegations of Dodi Fayed's father. I don't have information on that. So, going back to Jamal Khashoggi, chose the route or the path of becoming a journalist, and he operated his own newspaper, if you will. So he was in the loop of things happening in Saudi Arabia, but he was also very well connected in the West, in the United States and Great Britain. He was a contributor to the many news outlets, and he was also an advisor on foreign policy, a Middle Eastern policy, for many people in administrations and different administrations in the West and Great Britain, because he was very knowledgeable about the inner workings of the royal Saudi family and how things worked in the Middle East politics. So he also did a number of interviews with Osama bin Laden, because at some point he was also said to be a mediator between the Saudi royal family and Osama bin Laden, because Osama bin Laden, uh, he was the son of a rich Saudi businessman who was in construction. He did a lot of the development, construction, and roads and buildings and stuff in Saudi Arabia and the Middle East and in Africa. Uh, that's the lineage that Osama bin Laden came from. So they were trying to, the Saudi royal family, they were trying to reel him in to stop him from becoming, or to, because Osama bin Laden became uh, an anti-Western, fighter, or they terrorists, if you want to call them that, because of the Saudi family, since they had so many ties to the people in the West who bought the oil from them. They didn't want to be seen as promoting terrorism. Not that they don't promote terrorism, and the Saudi Arabian regime and the royal family has been one of the most brutal dictatorships and murderers of people who oppose them publicly or privately. They're just absolutely brutal and violent against anybody who opposes or stands in their way in the Middle East. And the reason they're not brought up to justice is because the United States government has always refused to hold them accountable for all the atrocities they have committed and continue to commit in the Middle East. The latest round of atrocities is the genocidal war against Yemen. That this war is completely financed by the Saudis, and the United States government sells them the weapons to kill all this, broke people in the Yemen region. And the latest sales of armament were signed over by Donald Trump, and he's openly stated that even if it's proved that the Saudi Arabians murdered Jamal Khashoggi, that he wasn't going to do anything because they bought a lot of weapons from us, from the United States, and if we stop selling them weapons, that would mean that we will lose jobs in the United States, and that somebody else was going to sell them the weapons. So, in other words, I don't give a flying fuck who they kill as long as they buy weapons from us. That's what Donald Trump said. Which basically has been the policy of when the United States government and its military-industrial complex, because they work in cahoots. They're basically the United States government. The military-industrial complex says this is what we need, and that's what the United States government gives them and does. So, and then we send our children to go fight illegal wars and kill Middle Eastern people, and somehow we're told that we're doing a patriotic service and liberating the Middle East, when in fact we're committing genocide of Middle Eastern people. And basically the latest rounds of Middle East wars are nothing but terrorism with a huge budget, and financed by the U.S. taxpayer. So back to Jamal Khashoggi. Jamal Khashoggi, he was married, he divorced, and wanted to get married to this Turkish lady. They go to the Saudi Arabian consulate in Turkey, and she waits outside, and he goes in, and because Jamal Khashoggi had been criticizing and attacking. Now, mind you, when he was doing he stopped his interviewing back in the day of Osama bin Laden, because Osama bin Laden became radicalized and became too extreme, and he started denouncing the attacks that he was doing against, or his attitude or whatever. So he also started attacking. He was against the Saudi regime's brutality, against the Saudi regime's genocidal war against Yemen, and he started. He's been a champion. He was a champion of women's rights, of democracy in the Middle East, and I'm talking about Jamal Khashoggi. So basically, he was seen as a threat to the Saudi regime. He was ordered to close his newspapers and all this stuff, basically. So he had to go into exile to London, I believe, and he started to write articles in the Washington Post, and a very well respected journalist. So MBS, MBS, those are Mohammed bin I forgot his last name, the son of the king of Saudi Arabia. The king of Saudi Arabia having recently died. He became the power behind the throne. And MBS, who at the beginning of his rule, if you will, started to be considered as a reformer and as a progressive in the Saudi Arabian regime, but on the other side, behind everybody's back, he was incarcerating and executing people who were against him, bombing the crap, increasing the murders campaign of Saudi Arabia and against the Yemeni people. He was just becoming another brutal dictator. So Jamal Khashoggi started attacking him with verbally and stuff. So the presumption is that MBS had Jamal Khashoggi murdered. The reports by the Turks are saying that the Saudis had a 15-man team of assassins and people that were sent into the Turkish embassy, Saudi Arabia's Turkish embassy, to kill this man, dismember him, and dispose of him. They even brought in a forensic specialist, a person who specializes in crime scenes. And at first, they said that Jamal Khashoggi had exited. That nothing happened. He just left. He left. He came out. He came out through the back. And now they're, after international pressure and people pressuring the Saudi Arabian regime to come clean about this, in that Jamal Khashoggi died under interrogation that went bad. Bullshit. The reality is they sent a hit team and a team of assassins and people to dispose of the body, to kill who was perceived to be a threat to international relations of the Saudi regime. And then of course Donald Trump did, he doesn't give a shit as long as he continues to sell the weapons the United States manufactures to this murderous regime of Saudi Arabia. As long as he doesn't give a shit. Neither do the people who support him. So here's neither do the Christians who support Donald Trump give a rat's ass about Jamal Khashoggi being dismembered, chopped to pieces, and probably have his remains stuffed in bags and flown back to Saudi Arabia in private jets full of Saudi Arabian assassins and forensic specialists in how to clean up a murder scene. Isn't that something? That this so-called pious and loving Republican Christians don't give a rat's ass about the murder of a freedom fighter, and wanted the end of murder and terrorist regimes, and had fought his entire life against oppression and terrorism. How all of a sudden of this Republican Christian people give a rat's ass about the murder of a freedom fighter. The hypocrisy is staggering. What's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen, there will be some international pressure. None of it will come from the United States government. Donald Trump just said it. Well, they denied it. That's all I need. Or they said it was an accident, a mistake. That's all we need. Okay, how many more weapons do you need to continue to kill innocent civilians in the Middle East? As long as we get to continue to manufacture weapons and sell them to murderous regime, who gives a shit? Because Mr. and Mrs. whoever works at the Lockheed and Northrop Grumman factory making bombs to kill Yemeni people, as long as some American people have some jobs, which are not that many really. But even if they were, the entirety of the U.S. job market, how dare us call ourselves, good Christians and good people and the champions of democracy and freedom in the world, when we don't give a shit about the atrocities being committed in the name of weapons sales. So, what's going to happen is, with this attitude from the Trump regime, more and more, murderous regimes around the world are going to be emboldened to take action against people who talk, who dare talk back or bad about them. And you're going to see this type of action from murderous regime like Saudi Arabia and other regimes continue to become more brazen, more common, more open, because nothing happens to them, and it's an embarrassment, and it's an indictment on the moral decay and the disgraceful and the disgusting pig human trash that we have in the White House, in his followers, his hypocrites followers. I only hope that the international pressure on these regimes will curb these atrocities, and hopefully our my fellow people who I consider myself an independent journalist, editor, whatever you want to call me, I don't care, commentator of the human history. Hopefully, we don't have to worry that this is going to go down the path of fascism, a world of fascism, controlled by fascism, where people who speak against abuses are targeted for assassination. But guess what? Even if I'm targeted for assassination, I'm going to continue to tell the truth, because I would rather die free than live like a slave.